A course that I'm giving that is called Analysis 101, and we typically break down the analytic process into 6 steps. The first 2 steps are, making your plan. So identifying your topic, your context, and your analytical question. Steps 3 and 4 is the actual preparation and performing of the stats analysis. And steps 5 and 6 is sharing your finding, and that's probably where you're at right now. But presenting your findings clearly to others is one of the most challenging aspects of the analytical process. And that's why, especially when you spend months and months and months analyzing data, if you've clearly defined your plan at first with research questions, it's easier to get back on track and, okay, staying true to your research questions, staying true with the goals of your projects. That's going to help you tell a clear story. You want to structure your narrative so that you're guiding your reader and interpreting the results for them. And so if you will, we will, that was just a slide to show you that dissemination of your work is important. You go from an Excel table to maybe extracting a few key messages, but then you need that last step of action. You want to inform your stakeholders. You want to fill a data gap. So in an ideal world, your work will be useful to someone, somewhere. Enough. But we all know it's not enough, but why tell a data story? Stories are powerful tools because, well, people respond better to stories than to data. Stories can captivate and stories can engage. They make data more relatable, especially if your audience is not, people who are really, statistically savvy or used to dealing with data. Stories make your data more relatable, they lend structures to your data, and they lead to better understanding and retention. I think I have an example here which I hope will illustrate. So a data story is a narrative built around a set of data, built around a set of tables, and it's accompanying visualizations to help convey the meaning of the data. A data story has 3 components: data, a narrative, and visualizations. Visualization part in your data story is statistics and information that you created, but it's the information that you choose to include in your data story. You are likely going to produce a lot of data tables, or you're going to do a lot of analysis throughout your analytical journey. Your task here is to carefully select the findings that are essential to telling your story. Component of a narrative. Well, the narrative explains your data. So what's the narrative? It's the data that you choose to report. Again, you are your own thorough editor at this point. It's the order in which you report your findings. We're going to talk about narrative flow in a few slides, so keep that in mind. And it's the supporting information, including the context to the data. Storytelling, we can say that there's 3 components of a data story in your narrative. It's the what, it's the so what, and it's the now what. So if you don't know, they're important because a good data visualization will aid the reader's interpretation of your data story. A good data visualization will be or must be clear and decluttered. It must be quickly interpretable and makes your key findings pop. What I do when I extract when I identify the third part, I think I'm good for time, is to plan your data story, and it has 3 steps. So first, who's your audience? Super important to identify your audience from the get-go. Then, what's the goal and what's the context of your data story? And third, what format will best achieve this goal? Are you writing a research paper, an infographic, an article for the media, etc., or maybe you are producing many products for the same analysis? It's good to know right at the beginning. The first format, now I'm going to talk about the flow. Your audience and your chosen format will drive your choice of narrative flow. So for example, a research report usually follows a chronological flow, and this is what I'm going to talk about in the next slide. Whereas a journalistic style report requires the use of an inverted pyramid flow, and that is the style that we use in the daily at StatScan, and I'm going to talk about it in a few slides. Chronological flow, detailed methodological report. So what makes a good data story? And that's my last slide. So it has a clear goal or purpose. It is format to tailored, its format is tailored to an audience. It uses context to frame the story. The context gives meaning to the numbers, and it's focused on your key messages. Your data story highlights the main points. It has a clear structure. It uses well-designed and appropriate data visualizations to highlight your key messages. And if you do all of these things well, you're.
So these are some of the key ones. Again, a lot of these have additional nuances to them, but confirmation bias, seeking positive evidence to confirm beliefs. That never happens in academia, of course, but in public policy, you know, it's just a trap, right? Again and again and again that we see, particularly amongst statements that are already made publicly, and we have to come in and awkwardly present some well-rounded evidence. Ostrich effect, avoiding that which might disagree with our beliefs, and that word is very important, beliefs. Did you make a leap of faith, or did someone make a leap of faith about a certain conclusion about a group, about an outcome, about a program? And, you know, we have to kind of challenge those things. Halo effect, using experiences from a few, in this case, students, to generalize to all. Again, this is stereotyping. This is, you know, all those types of things that, again, in a cognitive space, it's understandable. You know, in a public policy space, we really have to kind of disrupt and break that apart. Privilege effect, my reflection must be right, as you were not there. So this is where, you know, combination of different types of data can come in and be very, very helpful. IKEA effect, it must have worked this way, as this is the way that I did it. Law of the instrument, I think you've all heard this before. If you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and when we look at the different types of evidence that come our way, particularly in our case to help students, there might be multiple solutions to help a problem. Our job is to illuminate the path. And finally, anecdotal fallacy, again, never happens. Highlighting anecdotes that support our interpretations, kind of emphasize this as well. Focus on the findings, de-emphasize the methods. When coming in as social scientists, experts, statisticians, there's almost, you don't want to take advantage of it, but there's almost an embedded trust that your method is sound, that there's no surprises, that you're not going to kind of trip anyone up at a later date and be unrepresentative of what you're doing. So my advice to you is never to, you know, is undermine that trust, and that when you're bringing something in, to make sure it is representative, but get to the findings pretty quickly, just in terms of time management and empathy.
And about analysis, and as mentioned by Evelyn, is super important. Visualizations are really important as that sort of shortcut to understanding. And it's important to really put some effort into easily understood visualizations. Some of the visualizations that come from my team to me and to even Keith, they're not so easy to understand. They're technical. They're still in a place of trying to express a lot of ideas and a lot of information in one space. But by the time we take it farther, we need to have something that people can understand quickly and that they can ask questions about. The second piece here, and just as I mentioned before, anticipating questions is super important in talking to people in government about policy. When you're talking to, before you get there, think about who you're going to see. Think about what you're sending them. Think about what kind of role they have. What do they care about? If it's possible to know, what kind of questions